Welcome to this session, final session on shell scripting. We will review what we have done in all these sessions. So, this is essentially be very useful for you when you are going to prepare for an exam, and we are not going to look at any examples, but we will just at a higher level we will try to understand what are all the things that we studied in shell scripting. There are a lot more to be studied. Okay. So, our suggestion is you can look at the reference book that we supply along with the course, or the references that we supply along with the course to improve your knowledge on shell scripting. But whatever we have done in the past 13 or 14 sessions, we will try to review now. Okay, we started the course with history of what are the different types of shells, history of a shell, why we need a shell. A shell actually provides a nice user interface between the machine and the user, and we also looked at various types of shells. We also mentioned during the course that we are not going to stick with just Bourne shell, we will also be taking normal shells. So, it is Bourne again shell, and then probably we said that we will not be looking into Korn shell and C shell. The syntax for Korn shell and C shell is slightly different from what we had seen as syntax today, but I hope in the last session we told you how to understand a shell script without even knowing about how the shell script works. So, of course, it needs a lot of time to execute the shell and then debug it and understand. There are a lot of other features also in shell. Okay. So, this course was basically about the basics of shell scripting. We also found out that there were 3 ways of executing shell scripts. Okay. The one is using the chmod, the other is you invoking the shell itself inside the code, or you can create an external shell and then invoke the program. Then we also found out that your code should have a lot of comments, okay, which helps you understand. Usually if you remember, we write code for others, we do not write the code for ourselves, because we know what we have done, but we want others to understand what we have done. Therefore, that is one of the reasons why you actually comment shell script or the code. Then we looked at variables. Okay. We looked at initially we started the course, we said that only one type of variable can be declared called the string variable, but then later we found out that we could also have typed variables, which ensured that your program did a strict type checking, so that the amount of errors that you will get can be reduced. For example, if you declare a variable as an int, it has to be an int throughout the end of the program. You can't convert it as a string and then make it as an int. So, such kind of restrictions can be actually enforced by using the command called declare. So, we also saw that the variables were of 3 types. One is the system variable, okay, the environment variable and the shell variables. Okay. So, we had variables like path, the internal field separator, the log name and things like that. Now, one of the things, I mean, whether I should worry whether it is a system variable or an environment variable or shell variable, well, you will get used to it as you start to do more and more programming and start looking at these variables. Then we looked at flow control. Okay. We looked at sequencing operations and how to repeat particular commands more than once. We actually looked at the 2 syntaxes for for loop, the one that worked on strings and the other that worked on integers. So, and then we also looked at the while do and the until do loops. Okay. Which one to choose? You could choose one that follows the logic of the code if you are commenting the code, and then if you want to match your comments with the logic, then choose one of this. We also saw that the loops can be broken, okay, or you can continue executing the loops. Then we saw a bunch of file test operators. Okay. We could I mean, this is one of the powerful concepts in shell scripts, okay, where you can test if the if condition tests for various types of files, whether you are using a special file, whether you are using a system file, whether you are using a system file such as pipes, whether your file size is 0, okay. All those aspects can be tested, and if you want to write a C program, a system level C program, it is all extremely difficult. So, shell scripting actually helps you to work with files in a much easier fashion. Then we saw flow control, where we used if then else statement, and we also used if then elif statements, etc. And if you had multiple choices or multiple paths based on a decision, we found that we can use the case statement, which is similar to the case statement in C programming language. We also saw that the way you have to compare the strings is different from the way you have to compare integers. Okay. We also found out that we can do expression evaluation. Okay. You can look at kind of use the expression expr function, or you can use bunch of other utilities such as BC and other calculating utilities, more powerful calculators. You can incorporate it within your shell scripts. We also took a look at arrays. Okay. So, how to declare arrays in shell scripts, then manipulation of arrays. Okay. We also looked at operators. Okay. We looked at arithmetic operators, Boolean operators, and shell also provides you ways to write functions and procedures. We can also use recursive functions in shell, and if you look at the functions are very powerful, because you can actually do a modular kind of development. Okay. There are 2 or 3 ways in which you can do modular kind of development in shell script. One, you can break a program into functions. The other way is you can write coroutines, and you can execute not only coroutines, you can also execute programs within subshells. So all these features put together provide you a wide range of tools to solve a particular problem. You can write parallel algorithms using shell scripts. In that way, your shell scripts are very powerful. The most, and the power gets enhanced further if you start using pattern matching. Shell script provides bunch of pattern matching syntax. Okay, if you remember in the last examples that we saw in the last session, one of the examples was actually extremely cumbersome to understand, but then with just 2 lines of code we were able to solve a huge problem, where there were about 10 lines of code that was written, solved these problems in just 2 or 3 lines of code. So that is, so writing a crisp shell script is also extremely important when you are learning about shell scripting. So we also saw about coroutines, and then we also saw that you could do inter-process communications with signals. Okay. And then we saw how to ignore signals, we saw how to execute important parts of the code with, and then trap. We also how important parts of the code can be executed by masking the signals, and then again how you can unmask the signals. Unmasking is a process by which the signal, your program again starts responding to signals. Okay. Otherwise your program, and with signals you also understood that your program would either dump a core or it will exit. So those kind of abnormal properties of programs can be solved if you can use trap function or call. Then we also understood about subshell, so how variables are passed between subshell. We looked at an example of eval where you have to execute the program twice. Okay. So you can execute the same program twice. It was that provided more functions and power to shell script. And finally, we also saw some examples whereby you could try to understand, even if you are not familiar with syntax of the shell script, we were explaining how you could try to execute the code and then try to understand the logic behind the shell script. Now, is that all to shell script? No. There are a lot of things that are there that we have not taken in this course, because this is just an introductory course. Please take a look at the references, okay, where we have suggested some books. Some of these books might be complicated, okay, but then try out. The best way is by practice. You learn any language by using it. Okay. So please practice a lot of shell scripts. I think our assignments will help you, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much.